Now, there's one other major innovation in this manifesto. There isn't a line or policy in this book that will cost money that we haven't accounted for with savings elsewhere. We have scrutinised public spending line by line and found the savings we need to pay for all our priorities, as Vince has explained. And also to put well over £10 billion into the deficit every year from 2012. Now, I believe this is the first time a political party has spelt out, line by line, its figures right there in its manifesto. Turn to page 100. The figures are there for everyone to see. We know how every policy will be paid for. We know how to make that huge £10 billion dent in the structural deficit. And we know how to invest in your schools and create jobs even in these difficult times. These are promises that you can trust. The two old parties, they're conspiring to airbrush the recession out of this election. Labour, so we don't blame them for the damage they've done. The Conservatives, so they don't have to come clean about the cuts and the tax rises they're planning. They are treating people like fools, imagining that manifestos barely fit for a time of plenty are good enough for a time when money is tight. Our manifesto recognises that the world has changed. There isn't spare money to splash around. We can no longer rely on the city to pay our bills. People have got to be levelled with. It's wrong to promise something for nothing. It's only because we're willing to make difficult decisions to find cuts in some areas that we can make the commitments in this manifesto in other areas. We've identified more than £15 billion of savings year on year in this manifesto. That's why we can commit to phasing out tuition fees. That's why we can promise a new triple guarantee to pensioners. So pensions rise in line with earnings, prices, or 2.5%, whichever is the highest. It's because we're making savings, like scrapping identity cards, rolling back the database state to restore people's liberty, that we can afford to put 3,000 more police on the beat to protect their security. It's because we're refusing to ring-fence bureaucrats and waste in the NHS that we can be confident about protecting the A&E departments, the maternity wards, the GP surgeries and other services in the NHS on which we all depend. It's because we'll cut civilian staff in the Ministry of Defence that we can afford to give a pay rise to our brave servicemen and women, so no one goes into harm's way on less basic pay than a new police constable. This is hope married to credibility. It's optimism that is in touch with reality. It's what makes our manifesto different. And through it, page by page, you'll still see us retain our commitment on the environment, with policies to make our lives, our jobs, our communities more sustainable in every single chapter. So if you want practical help instead of empty words, this is a manifesto for you. If you want a government that helps where it can and gets out of the way when it should, this is a manifesto for you. If you want promises that you can trust, this is a manifesto for you. The two old parties, they've taught us to expect so little from politicians and get even less. They've taught us to expect that elections are 4 weeks of being fobbed off with promises you know will be broken, and in the end, you vote for the red team or the blue team, whichever one you dislike the least. Our manifesto says an emphatic no to that kind of politics. Our manifesto says this is what Liberal Democrats want for Britain. Fair taxes that put money back in your pocket. A fair chance for all of our children at school. A fair future, creating jobs by going green. And a fair deal, cleaning up politics once and for all. A country, in short, that we can all be proud of. A country where you can reach your extraordinary potential. If that's what you want, vote for us. If you've ever looked at the Liberal Democrats and thought, they've got the right ideas, but can they deliver? This manifesto is your answer. We can, we will. Thank you very, very much. So, we'll do it at the end. We'll do that. Questions? Nick, and then Tom.
Thank you very much. Nick Robinson, BBC News. You have claimed credit for unique candour with the British people. In your tables, it shows £4,625,000 million from anti-avoidance measures. Are we to believe that the Treasury knows that there is this vast sum out there, but simply hasn't got round to claiming it? Or in reality, aren't you promising the largest tax cut for ordinary people in British recent history on a wing and a prayer?
No, I disagree. I'll tell you why. The government itself estimates that tax avoidance and evasion now per year costs this country over £40 billion. We are very modestly and very conservatively estimating that we can recoup just 10% of that money that is lost. We can do it through a number of measures. We are going to introduce a general tax avoidance law which would make it illegal, which it presently is not, to have any tax practice which has its purpose, its main purpose, or one of its purposes, to avoid tax. That isn't the case at the moment. At the moment, as you know, there is a great industry of people who explicitly exploit the loopholes that have multiplied in an increasingly complex tax system under Gordon Brown. We would stamp out, for instance, excuse the pun, the tendency for corporate bodies to avoid stamp duty by basically listing their property transactions in a company elsewhere, so that they then, in effect, pay stamp duty of barely a few percent. That can easily be stamped out. We will also insist that there is a system of what we call pre-clearance, so that particularly companies, when they are seeking to maximise tax advantage, have to seek clearance first, which is not the case at the moment, from Revenue and Customs. And we would ask them to do that, or we'd insist they do that, on a commercial basis, so that Revenue and Customs is in effect paid all the fees that at the moment go to the teams and the football teams of lawyers and accountants to avoid tax, to tell the company in question whether they can go ahead or not. All of those things have been looked at, they've been scrutinised line by line. We've got bags of detail which we can provide to you later. We think it is a very modest and achievable objective of recouping just 10% of all tax which is avoided and evaded.
Just briefly, if I may, as a follow-up. £4,625 million. You say the Treasury knows it's there, but they simply haven't got round to getting it.
We say that the government has simply not prepared to take the difficult decisions, which, for instance, allow major retailers, I probably can't say the name, which we're all familiar with on every single one of our high streets, to sell prime estate property in this country and pay, what is it, about 4% of stamp duty on those transactions, to avoid stamp duty. Everyone knows that. It's been going on for years. It's still going on. It can be stamped out, and we've got the plan to do it.